hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. The world is waking up, and this is the tipping point.
Oh, I'm not Scott. This is Ron. I'm pinch hitting for Scott today. We've got to make sure you guys get Mr. Constitution class.
Lost your audio.
Can you hear me, Doug, now?
I can hear you now. I feel like a commercial.
Very cool.
All right, so we have people piling in. Does the chat room open?
24. The chat room is open.
Yeah, but they're not going to be in the Zoom chat. There's a separate chat, right? I just don't know where it's at.
Why don't you go ahead? You know what, Doug, we're here, and we've got a few people watching as they start to pile in here. I'm just going to let you go ahead and go on in, and we can just let the live stream video. When people come in, they can go back and watch from the beginning. I'm a rookie at this. So
all right, well,
cut me some slack. Please give me some slack here. I'm a rookie.
All right,
at this.
Everybody, then I'll do the introductions. Hi, everybody. Douglas V Gibbs here, Mr. Constitution. We are on Scott McKay's Patriot Streetfighter, but Scott McKay being on the road and having all kinds of things going on all at once, Ron decided, and I was willing to accept this, that Mr. Ron would pinch hit, fill in for Scott, because when I'm on the show, Scott does, well, he introduces me, maybe asks a question, kicks his feet up, and enjoys. And so he figured even Ron could be a part of that. So Ron and I are here with you. So if you see the gentleman in the blue shirt and you say, who is that guy? That guy is Ron. Once again, I am Mr. Constitution. Now, if you're watching live, this is Tuesday, June 15th, and we are also just about 2.5 hours away from, if you're watching live, from the event in the Inland Empire here in Southern California, where Scott McKay and the Arise Freedom Tour is going to be at Riley's Farm. It's right up the road from where we're at, and I'm live right down the hill from where that is, so it's kind of in my stomping ground, so I will be at that event. So if you're watching live and you're like, I wonder if I should go to that Inland Empire event, Yeah, Scott McKay's gonna be there, but man, Mr. Constitution's gonna be there too. You got to come out to see me, brother and
Hey,
sister.
I'm gonna be there too.
Well, yeah, and of course Ron. Now, Ron, you're gonna be famous now because you get to hang out with Mr. Actually, I'll be honest with you. Ron is the gentleman who introduced me to Scott. If it wasn't for Ron, you guys wouldn't have the Mr. Constitution Tuesday thing going on. So thank you, Ron. Ron was coming to one of my live Constitution classes in Corona, California, which right now is on hiatus. It's the only class that I can't do because the employees at the location were a little nervous about the COVID thing, and the owner, though he agrees with me about the mask, masks are ridiculous, COVID scam, all that. As a business owner, he didn't want his employees turning on him, so we haven't done that class in a year. But we do have 6 live classes in Southern California. So if you are in Southern California or somewhere near, and you would like to attend them, go to DouglasVGibbs.com and hit the Constitution classes or the classes link, and that'll get you, all 6 of them where they're at. And so let's get started now that it's about 2 after. And where we left off, and I'm going to actually do a little refresher, help some of you catch up. Some of you are new. Some of you have not been a part of this. That's okay. You're going to learn something. Plus, also, you can go back, find the videos. They're somewhere. And, I think we need to create a Mr. Constitution page here at where all the videos, where you can just go back and see them. I think that might be a good idea. So we'll see what happens. But what we talked about last time we were on, which was about 2 weeks ago, was natural born citizens. So I'm going to go over that one more time real quick. Refresher for those of you who watched that episode, and interesting information for those of you who are new. Once again, I am Mr. Constitution Douglas V Gibbs, DouglasVGibbs.com. So check out what I do. All right. So if you have a pocket Constitution or a big Constitution, then go to Article 2, Section 1, and we're about 5 paragraphs in. Yet what? You don't have a Constitution? Oh, man. Well, we can fix that. Go to DouglasVGibbs.com, hit the Constitution link. Thanks to a good friend of mine, not that I'm naming names, Ron, I put the Constitution on the website. And so you can actually pull it up on your computer and follow along also if you don't have a Constitution. I mean, hey, we're full service here. Okay, so we have the 5th paragraph in Article 2, Section 1. Now, remember, the Constitution, the outline is pretty easy to follow, really. Article 1 is about the legislature. Article 2 is about the president. Article 3 is about the judiciary. Article 4 is about the states. Article 5, amendments. Article 6, the federal government. Article 7, ratification. Then you get into the amendments. It's outlined very nicely. And we are in Article 2, Section 1. We're talking about the President of the United States, and here's what it says. No person except a natural-born citizen or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution shall be eligible to the office of president. Now, it has been argued that a citizen and natural-born citizen is the same, and all you got to be is born on American soil, and that's good enough for both. If they were the same, they would not have created a caveat here showing a difference. Once again, now that I've said that, follow me, listen carefully. No person except a natural-born citizen or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution. That's because the natural-born citizens weren't old enough to be president yet. A natural-born citizen is a person whose both parents were citizens at the time of the birth of the child. Well, the United States didn't become a country until 1776. This is 1787 was being written. So the oldest natural-born citizens are 11 years old. So no one's eligible to be president. You got to be at least 35. So they had to add the caveat, or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution. If natural-born citizen and citizen were the same thing, they wouldn't have needed to do that. But because they're different, they had to do that. Lubricate the larynx here real quick. No way I don't start coughing into the microphone or something. All right. So natural-born citizen, two different things. Natural-born citizen, both parents are citizens at the time of birth. Whether you're born on American soil or not, actually. The Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1790 added the option that someone who's not born on American soil also could be a natural-born citizen as long as both parents at the time of their birth were citizens. Great way to help you understand this is it doesn't matter how your parents were citizens. They don't have to necessarily have been born here. My wife is an immigrant. She naturalized in 2007. Our children were born in 1985 and 1990. Neither one can be president of the United States because only one parent was a citizen at the time of their birth. But my wife naturalized 2007. Now she's a citizen. If we had a child now, not that we are considering such a thing, that child would be eligible to run for president. They would be a natural born citizen. So it makes sense, right? Why would they feel this way? Why would they do this? Why would it be so important to have a second generation American rather than an anchor baby be president? Well, I think you figured that out by the way I said it, right? We want full allegiance. So by having been born of American parents, you're going to be raised in the American experience with American teachings, American system, plugged into your skull. If you've got a parent from somewhere else, there's going to be mixed teachings. You're going to grow up with other ideologies swimming through that skull of yours. And they wanted to protect against that kind of divided loyalties or loyalty to foreign ideas. The Tories, for example, at the time of the American Revolution, believed that America should remain under the British crown. They were a threat to the American system. Interestingly enough, the Tories tended to have at least one parent who was born in Britain or was a citizen of Britain. So that tells you right there that Tories tended not to be natural born citizens. So to protect against the Tories, you want natural born citizens so that you don't have a Tory, someone with divided allegiance, as commander-in-chief. Last thing you need is someone who is commander-in-chief and then suddenly the country that they have a mixed loyalty with suddenly is the one that they have to operate as commander-in-chief against. You got a problem, don't you? So that's one of the reasons. So natural born citizen, both parents, citizens at the time of the birth. In the case of Barack Obama, for example, didn't matter if he was born in Hawaii. He could have been born on the front steps of the White House with the national anthem playing and rockets blasting in the sky and his mom waving 2 American flags while she's pushing them out. He still would not be eligible for president because by his own admittance, his father was not a citizen at the time of his birth. Now, the last sentence of the 12th Amendment says that the vice president has to meet the same eligibility as the president. So she also, in the case of Kamala Harris, would need to be a natural born citizen. Both of her parents were visitors. They were students here on a student visa at the time of her birth. So even though she was born in Oakland, neither parent was a citizen at the time of her birth. She's not eligible for office. There's actually a lawsuit against her. You can check it out at constitutionassociation.com or politicalpistachio.com. Either location, you can find the link to the original complaint. Okay, that all said, then it says, neither shall any person be eligible to that office who shall not have attained the age of 35. So you got to be at least 35 years old. And remember, it's 30 for senator, it's 25 for member of the House of Representatives, 35 for president. So you better be mature. You got to have some political experience. You've got to have a background. You have to have been around for a while in order to be president of the United States. We're not going to give it to some kid right out of indoctrination camp, college, I mean. So you got to be at least 35 to be president of the United States. All right. And then it says, and have been 14 years a resident within the United States. So even though you might be a natural born citizen, it's possible you might have been a diplomat or something, so you're a resident outside the country. They want you over the last 14 years to have been a resident of the United States. Why? Once again, those foreign ideas. They don't want you to have coming back with all these foreign ideas. It's like being covered with leeches, man. You come back covered with leeches, you're no good. You got to come back and have been here at least 14 years. You got the American experience going on. The founding fathers were really worried about foreign allegiances, about foreign ideas in the system. All right, so now we're all caught up. New people who were here last time we're on, we're all caught up. We're all on the same page, right? Speaking of same page, right after that paragraph in the Constitution, the next section is in brackets. I'm going to read it, but we're going to go deeper into this section when we go to the 25th Amendment. So because it's in brackets, this is the way it was, no longer the way it is. This was changed by the 25th Amendment. In case of the removal of the president from office, or of his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of said office, the same shall devolve on the vice president. In other words, vice president will act as president. It does not say, though, that the vice president becomes president, and at the time there was a lot of confusion about that. And the Congress may by law provide for the case of removal, death, resignation, or inability, both of the president or vice president, declaring what officer shall then act as president, and such officer shall act accordingly until the disability removed or a president shall be elected. It was realized that an internal coup could very easily happen with that, because it was up to Congress to decide, gosh, you know what? That president's no good. We're going to remove him from office and replace him with our guy. Too easy. So the 25th Amendment actually creates a very intricate, difficult, complex way of getting rid of the president. It's not as easy as people think. When we get 25th Amendment, we'll talk about that and how there's been talk about using the 25th Amendment against Mr. Biden. There was talk about using it against Mr. Trump. And we'll use those scenarios to help you understand the 25th Amendment when we get there. All right, so we continue. Second to last paragraph in Article 2, Section 1. The president shall at stated times receive for his services. He's providing a service, a compensation which shall neither be increased nor diminished during the period for which he shall have been elected. You don't want to be able to bribe him with a raise or a decrease of pay. George Washington, by the way, refused to accept the compensation for being president, and Congress said, no, you can't refuse it. It says that the president shall receive a compensation. So he said, okay, fine, I'll receive $1 every year. Donate the rest. Sounds like another president recently. I'm trying to think of the name. Could it be that businessman? Possibly. Of course it was. But George Washington, that's what he did too. And the reason for, once again, neither increase or diminish, we didn't want collusion, corruption going on, all of that jazz. And he shall not receive within that period any other emolument from the United States or any of them. Emolument being monies received, be it a salary or a grant or anything. So while president, the president cannot receive any money from any other governmental office or department or state or anything. He only receives once again, it's to guard against bribery, corruption, things like that. Now, here's one of my favorite parts of the Constitution, the oath. Now understand, listen to these words. This is the oath to this day that the president has to recite. Before he enter on the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath or affirmation. An oath is to God, an affirmation is not. There are actually those who believe and believed at that time that swearing to God was a sin. So they would not give an oath to God. They said that the Bible says, take no oaths. That's fine. You can give an affirmation. There's also those who may not believe in the same God. Once again, affirmations available. The founding fathers covered for just about everything. Here is the oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. This is the only leadership oath in the world that is like this, where the leader actually takes an oath to protect the supreme law of the land, the Constitution. Now, here's what's interesting. Did you notice, so help me God? No, it's not there. That was added by George Washington. George Washington actually started that tradition, as well as putting the hand on the Bible. He just felt it was the right thing to do, so he asked for a Bible. They actually, now sit down, don't get nervous. This is just a historical fact. They didn't have a Bible on hand, so they went to the nearest Masonic temple to go get a Bible. Yeah, there was a Masonic temple right up the street. And guess what? They had a Bible. So he brought the Bible down. George Washington put his left hand on that Bible. He raised his right hand, and he gave his oath, and then he added, so help me God, at the end. Though the hand on the Bible and the so help me God is tradition, it is not constitutional requirement, but because of our belief in the Christian God, the tradition has never wavered. Well, there's rumors that it did under a couple of people, but I won't get into those discussions today. All right, so now, Ron, you're the audience, because, see, they're not asking me questions. Do you have any questions?
No, not right now.
Not right now. Okay, very
Right
good.
now.
Well, of course, he's gone through the Constitution with me a few times. We talk every once in a while, so he's a tad ahead of the rest of you guys. But if there is any burning questions, I usually know what questions people have, and I will try to answer everything. So be patient with me. We're going to start now with Article 2, Section 2, and this is huge. I want you to really pay attention here. You note takers, it's time to pull out the pen and paper. This is important stuff. Article 2, Section 2, the president shall be commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. Commander-in-chief, the chief commander, the person in charge of the military who dictates where they're moving to, what they're doing, how they're going to be deployed, all of that. Commander-in-chief. Now, there's two groups here. There's the military services, Army and Navy, it says here, but then we're going to include Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and Space Force, all into that group. And then you have the militias, the militia of the several states. All right, now, here's the question, and I'm going to answer it for you, but I know it's burning through your head. It says at the end, when called into the actual service of the United States. When is the Army, Navy, and other military services in the actual service of the United States? Always. Always. As a sailor, when I was in the United States Navy, I was always in the actual service of the United States. Whether I was sleeping, I was on duty, I was on leave, I was always under the actual service of the United States. So at all times while I was serving in the military, the President of the United States was my commander-in-chief. However, the militias are a little different. The militias are not always under the service of the United States. Matter of fact, real quick, for those of you who have a pot constitution with you, or you're on my website at douglasvgibbs.com, and you hit that Constitution link, go back to Article 1, Section 8, and on page 7 of the pot constitution that looks like this one, or about halfway through Article 1, Section 8, it says to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. Before that word "to" is the Congress shall have power. That comes with it. So the Congress has the power to call forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, repel invasions. In other words, the militia is not under the actual service of the United States unless Congress calls them forth. Otherwise, they're under the actual service of the states. They belong to the states first. Congress can call them into the actual service of the United States. But until Congress does, the president is not their commander-in-chief. And, you know, I have a friend of mine who's in the National Guard, and he went to the Ukraine to teach the soldiers there how to shoot. You know, he was a marksman, you know, and wanted to make them good, you know, marksmen, whatnot. So he got paid by the federal government. His paycheck came from the United States government because he was in the actual service of the United States. Congress had called him forth to be in Ukraine. However, let's say there's a natural disaster and they call the National Guard up, the governor does, and the legislature to pitch, you know, sandbags. The check comes from the state because the militia, National Guard in this case, is under the actual service of the state of California or whatever state that militia is a part of. So the president is only commander-in-chief over the militias. That's the National Guard, the Naval Guard, the Air Guard, the Naval Militia, and the state militias. There's 24 states that still have state militias. California is one of them. Interestingly enough, California is the only state militia that trains with live ammunition. I always thought that was a funny piece of trivia there. But they are under the actual service of the state unless Congress calls them forth. Now, that's an interesting piece because then someone says, well, gosh, can the president call martial law? Yes and no. The president can say we're going to be under martial law, but he needs somebody to enforce it. Cannot use the military, posse comitatus, and other things like certain things in the Constitution says that the military can't be used for that. Military is for defending this country against foreign enemies. So the militia would be used to carry out martial law, but the militia cannot become a part of the commander-in-chief family until Congress calls them forth. So martial law cannot be independently called by the president. And martial law cannot be independently called by the Congress, because they call up the militia, but they need the president to act as commander-in-chief. It takes both. And that's the way our system is. There's checks and balances everywhere. There's nothing, for the most part, that can be done unilaterally, including martial law. And maybe in France or Germany, the leader can say martial law and the troops come, boom, 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 but not in America. It takes both Congress and the president. All right, clear as mud? All right, let's move on. Then it says he may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments. The fact is the president doesn't know everything. The president needs to get advice from the people around him. That's why he has a cabinet. That's why the president has the officers and departments around him. And he can ask their advice, and it says in the Constitution he is to ask their advice, and they're supposed to respond in writing. The wonderful thing about the founders is they wanted just about everything in writing. You know, transparency. Transparency was important. I know it seems like a foreign idea for a lot of us nowadays, but transparency was important to the founding fathers. And then it says he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in the cases of impeachment. Nixon, for example, Nixon had resigned so Ford was able to pardon him. Had he been impeached, in other words, had the House of Representatives brought charges against him, doesn't matter if he's removed from office or not, just that the charges were brought, pardon could not be given. All right, now it's not just presidents don't not only pardon people who have offenses against the United States, because I hear once a year they also pardon turkeys, but that's just me. All right. He shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur. And he shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, which shall be established by law. Now, this is important. And the reason why this is important is it reminds us of how important it was for the senators to be appointed by the states. Remember, we talked about this before in Article 1, Section 3. The senators were appointed by the state legislatures. The 17th Amendment in 1913 changed that and to the vote of the people. The senators, though, were originally appointed by the states until 1913. Why? Because it was the states who created the federal government. They created the federal government, and they wanted to have oversight over the creature they had created. And one way to have oversight is to have their own people serving in the United States Senate. So from the state's point of view, as the parents, think about this now. As the parents, they're basically saying, well, gosh, you want to negotiate a treaty? No problem, federal government, but we're going to approve it with 2/3 because we have the oversight. We need the oversight. Oh, you want to appoint, nominate, and have judges and other officers appointed? No problem, but we're going to confirm them because it was the state's way of making sure the federal government was, well, honest. The states wanted to make sure they were there to keep the federal government from becoming a tyranny. That's why those pieces, those mechanisms were in place. These mechanisms were in place to keep us a republic and not a democracy. As a republic, with all these checks and balances, what it did is it made it so that the federal government remained within its authorities. The states no longer have the Senate. Now the senators are voted in. The states no longer are involved in the budget. The 16th Amendment changed that. The state's voice has been diminished. And as a result, we have a federal government that is out of control. If we go back to being a republic, which would include these the state's mechanisms of being a republic and being involved, we wouldn't have the problems that we're having right now. Okay, let's continue. So he shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur So there has to be a quorum. At least 51 of them have to be there, and then 2/3 of them have to approve of the treaty. And remember, it's a state's voice. Look how dangerous treaties can be if it's not the state's voice. See, the senators from the states, appointed by the states, they're going to be like, yeah, is that good for the state? Now we got a bunch of ideological idiots in the Senate. And if it's good for their ideology, they're not going to care. They're going to vote for it. And it's a real problem. Okay. So we got the appointments and all other officers whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for. Okay. Then it says the Congress may by law vest the appointment of such inferior officers as they think proper in the president alone, in the courts of law, or in the heads of departments. There are certain things, in other words, that they will allow the president to choose without their okay. It's rare. It's usually because they want to go on Christmas vacation, things like that. And there's another opportunity for him to do it, recess appointments. The president shall have power to fill up all vacancies that may happen during the recess of the Senate by granting commissions which shall expire at the end of their next session. Now, here's the thing. It is possible to not allow the president to give recess appointments when Congress is not there for the most part by not technically going out of session. We'll read about that next. The president, let's see. Oh, no, we're not going to read about it next. I'm going to tell you what it is. Okay, that's right. We talked about it last week. Congress is allowed to go into what's called a pro forma session. Pro forma means they don't have a quorum. Less than half or less, they don't have the majority there, are present, and they did not adjourn. They did not go out of session. What this does, especially if they don't trust the president, is the president can't do a recess appointment because he needs the Senate to confirm the appointment, and they're still in session, so he can't do a recess appointment. But because there's only a few of them there, and they're in a pro forma session, there's not enough to do business, so there's not enough of them there to confirm. So in other words, hey, Buster, you're going to have to wait until there's enough people back from vacation or whatever they're gone for, and we have a quorum. Remember, a quorum in the United States Congress is a majority, and you need the majority in order to do business. All right, we got, it's only halfway through. We're a half an hour in, and we are in Article 2, Section 3 of the United States Constitution. He shall. The word shall is an interesting word. It doesn't mean ought to, doesn't mean kind of, sort of, maybe. He shall. It is definitive. Got to do it. He shall, from time to time, give to Congress information of the state of the Union. Traditionally, that's annually. Trying to remember if the current resident in the White House has done a State of the Union speech yet. I think the answer is no. He's talked to Congress. He has not done a joint session. Interesting to see if they're going to ever make him do it. He shall. It says he shall. But he's not sure what room he's in. I wonder if he's going to be able to do such a thing. So he shall from time to time give to the Congress information of the State of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. Notice it doesn't say he can order them. He shall recommend. Law is made by Congress, period. He can ask all he wants. He can recommend. He can have all kinds of suggestions. But if Congress does not want to pursue that type of a bill, they don't have to. Our system has checks and balances, and the president is not a ruler. And what we have today is then the president goes, oh, well, they're not going to make the bill. Well, then I'll just do it with an executive order. No. Remember, Article 1, Section 1, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in the Congress. All legislative powers. The president's not supposed to have any legislative powers. An executive order is not for the purpose of modifying law, creating law, repealing law, none of that. The president cannot do anything other than execute law. He can recommend, he can't make law. Now, here's a section that makes some people nervous, but there's a reason. He may, on extraordinary occasions. What's an extraordinary occasion? I think that is relative depending on who the knucklehead in place is. Convene both houses or either of them, and in case of disagreement between them respect to the time of adjournment, he may adjourn them to such time as he think proper. In other words, if they refuse to get together, he could tell them, hey, you guys got to get together. I need you guys in session. Or he could say, you know what, you guys are in session, but this is ridiculous. You guys need to cool off. You're now out of session. I adjourn both of you. Go to the pub and think about this, and you guys can get back together again later. The president can't do that. Now, back then, this was a reasonable clause because the politicians of the time, or should I say the statesmen of the time, had something that today they don't have: sacred honor. They were willing to work together. They were willing to listen to logic, other opinions, analyze, work together, come to a decision that is best for both parties. Not anymore. He shall receive ambassadors and other public ministers. He is our figurehead. While he may not be a king, he is a figurehead like a king, like a person in charge. So it is the president's job to receive these other leaders. Now, this is a very important one. He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. That means all the laws, whether he likes them or not. We have a president who refuses to right now, and a president prior to the one we just had before this one, who refuses to execute immigration law as it's written in the Constitution, as it's written in the U.S. Code, I mean. And the problem is he shall faithfully execute the laws of the United States. It's not a choice. Oh, I don't like those immigration laws. I'm not going to. No, it's not a choice. He shall faithfully execute the laws of the United States. President is acting unconstitutionally if they refuse to execute the laws of the United States. Big deal. It's a very big deal here. And shall commission all the officers of the United States. Commission is in the form of a letter normally signed by the president, and then it's delivered by the Secretary of State or the Secretary of State's office. When I talk officers, I'm not just talking military officers, but other officers like Secretary of State, judges, people like that. Okay, Article 2, Section 4. The president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for, so in other words, doesn't matter what the possible punishment is, if the crime for impeachment are these things and they're convicted, they have to be removed from office. That's what it's saying. For the conviction, in other words, Senate voted conviction, treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. What's a high crime and misdemeanor? A high crime is not a really bad crime. A high crime is a crime committed by a person in high office. In other words, all crimes committed by someone like a president who's in high office. High crimes and misdemeanors. Originally, misdemeanors, however, during the Constitutional Convention, they used the word maladministration. Maladministration, I like that word. In other words, he's not administering his office properly. He's not upholding the Constitution. He's not executing immigration law, for example. Maladministration is grounds for impeachment, or at least it was originally written into this clause. But they changed it to misdemeanors because there was a fear that it would be misunderstood. So misdemeanors includes maladministration and other things. In other words, if the president's doing anything that's unbecoming of the president of the United States, that places anything that is American at risk for any reason, including attitude towards us, that is grounds for impeachment. All right, we've made it to Article 3. And Article 3 is about your favorite people in government, judges. Think about judges. The judicial branch was supposed to be the weakest of the three branches originally. In fact, John Jay was our first Chief Justice of the United States, and John Jay was elected governor of New York. So he decided to resign as Chief Justice to serve as governor of New York. During his term as governor, 2 other chief justices came and went. And so the 4th position in history was available when John Jay was no longer governor of New York. And so John Adams asked John Jay if he would be willing to return as Chief Justice, because Jefferson and his Republicans had just won the White House and both houses of Congress. And so, according to John Adams and the Federalist Party, the best way to keep some type of power is to pack the courts. Not pack the Supreme Court, pack the whole court system. They actually created a whole bunch more judicial positions and then started appointing judges right and left, mostly left, after the election, but before Jefferson was inaugurated. And John Jay was asked, will you be the next Chief Justice? And John Jay said, it's to be beneath a man to hold such an office because it has no power in its present form. In its present form. In other words, John Jay believed that someday there would be power in the judges' seats. That someday the judges would convince everybody that they are the rulers of everything and that you can't argue with them. They walk on water and so on and so forth. But it wasn't happening yet, so he wasn't willing to hold the position. Instead, John Adams appointed John Marshall. Man, there's a lot of Johns. And John Marshall was Chief Justice of the United States for 36 years, and he did more damage to the U.S. Constitution than any Chief Justice of the United States in history.
Doug,
one of the things that he, I'm sorry?
I have a question from somebody.
Okay.
She says, since Biden is not allowing law and order, as in illegal immigration, can the people remove the president, or does the Congress have to do that?
It has to do it through the Congress. It has to be impeached through Congress. Now, that said, I'm a firm believer he may not be president much longer anyway. No, not because I think he's going to kill over, although that's a possibility too, but because I really do believe this Arizona audit is going to do a few things, but that's a different discussion for a different time. But no, it has to be through impeachment. Congress has to, the House of Representatives has to initiate the impeachment, and then the Senate would have to try it. That's the way to remove a president, aside from other less conventional means, which we can't talk about because then we'll be accused of inciting things. All right. Not that I said a thing. All right, so we got John Marshall. He's the Chief Justice of the United States. And remember I was telling you about how they were packing the courts, all of these new judges were being appointed? One of those guys was a guy named William Marbury. William Marbury was given the position of a Justice of the Peace in Washington, D.C. And whenever a judge goes through the process, he's nominated, he goes through the confirmation of the Senate. All that's left is for him to receive his commission. Remember, I said that earlier about commissions, how the president, signs the letter and then the Secretary of State delivers the commissions. The Secretary of State under John Adams did not get all of them delivered. There were so many commissions, he just didn't get through all of them. So on Inauguration Day, Thomas Jefferson takes the oath, takes office, and his Secretary of State is James Madison, who was going to be the 4th president of the United States, but at this moment, he is Secretary of State. And as Secretary of State, James Madison has this big stack of commissions that that the old Secretary of State almost gave away the whole story. The old Secretary of State under John Adams had not delivered, and he says to Thomas Jefferson, "What do I do with these commissions for these judges that got confirmed by the Senate?" And Jefferson says, "They are illegal, null, and void. Do not deliver them." Okay. James Madison did not deliver the commissions. William Marbury was one of the guys that didn't get his commission, so he sued James Madison for not delivering his commission. Hence the Marbury versus Madison case, which made it to the Supreme Court 1803. John Marshall, Chief Justice, they go through the case. William Marbury wins. And Chief Justice Marshall says, good news, you won your case. However, The courts don't have an enforcement arm. The enforcement arm is the executive branch, and it's the executive branch that's saying you're not getting your commission, so good luck getting your commission. Now, the reason why this is important is not because of how that case ended, but because of a judicial opinion that was inserted by John Marshall into that opinion of that case. The opinion was, as written by John Marshall, that any law that is not constitutional is repugnant to the Constitution, and therefore it is not a law. And that to uphold their oath to the Constitution, that means that the judges can strike down that law. It's no good. The idea came to be known as judicial review. Judicial review is the idea that the courts may review a law and determine whether or not they are just, unjust, constitutional, not constitutional, and then administer them as necessary. In other words, strike them down or whatnot. Now, let's go back to Article 1, Section 1. Article 1, Section 1 says, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress. Legislative powers are the power to create law, modify law, and repeal law or strike down law. It's a legislative action. So how is it that the courts can strike down a law they think is unconstitutional? Judicial review is now the law of the land according to the judges, even though it's unconstitutional. There's nothing in the Constitution that allows for it. It is based on a judicial opinion in the Marbury versus Madison case. So what that means is the courts gave themselves that power, even though the states are the ones supposed to give them any power, either through the Constitution or through amendment by ratifying with 3/4 vote. So now, Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College, some of you may have heard of him. A lot of people of you admire him. And he was a guest on my radio program, which is on Saturdays on KMET now, from 1 to 3, KMET1490am.com. But back then I was on a different station, 1050 AM here in Southern California. And he was on my program with me, and he argued with me about judicial review. Dr. Larry Arnn disagrees. He believes that the judges can do this. So I simply asked him a question. I asked him, I said, is the Constitution a document that is designed to limit the powers of the federal government? He said yes. So, okay. So the federal courts are a part of the federal government. To determine if a law, a federal law in particular, is constitutional or not is basically you're deciding if the federal government has the authority over the issue or the power that's listed in that law, right? He says yes. The courts are determining whether or not that law is constitutional. Is that not then the federal government through the courts deciding for itself what its own powers are and its own authorities are? How is that limited government? Now, typically, normally on the radio and on TV, dead air is a bad thing. But on my radio show at that moment, we had dead air. I waited for an answer. He had nothing to say. It was a beautiful thing. The fact is, judicial review is unconstitutional, and it gives the courts too much power. What it did is it allows the courts to interpret the law, interpret the Constitution, and then put their interpretation in play as if it's law. The way I like to explain this, to help you understand a little bit better, is my wife is originally from Mexico. My wife was born in Mexico. Her parents immigrated here when she was a child, legally. In fact, when candidate Trump said he wanted to build a great, big, beautiful wall, my wife's first words was, "That's my guy." So she's actually pretty conservative on the immigration issue. But anyway, and my father-in-law loves this country. He's a patriot. Absolutely love the man. He came here to be an American, and he says so. I remember one time I was out with him at a store called Cardenas, and a friend of his, said something, conversation about being Mexican-American, and Boppy's response was, "No, I didn't come here to be Mexican. I came here to be an American." When we talk about illegal immigration, my wife's response usually is illegal immigration is a slap in my dad's face. The man loves his country. The first thing he did when he came here is he took English classes and he took welding classes. Learn the language, get a skill. Got to appreciate a man like that. My mother-in-law, not so much. My mother-in-law has never learned English, never even thought about citizenship. I'm kind of happy she doesn't vote, to be honest with you. And when you walk through the front door of that house, it's like going through a portal and suddenly, boom, you are in Mexico. It's an amazing thing. Orange and green walls, that open Bible there at the entrance with a picture of Mary, Mother of Jesus above it. You know, the Bible that you're not allowed to change the pages of. It's, you know, and because she speaks Spanish and I don't, and I speak English and, well, she doesn't. If I'm going to communicate with her, my wife has to act as an interpreter. So I say to my wife in English what I want to tell her mother. She tells her mother in Spanish. Her mother responds in Spanish, and my wife tells me what her mother said in English, and I believe her. Even though the look on my mother-in-law's face doesn't match what my wife is telling me, she said. Who has the real power in that conversation? The interpreter. She could tell me whatever she wants. She could tell me her mother said anything she wants. How am I ever going to know any different? How can I argue? I don't know I don't understand the language. I have not learned that skill to understand Spanish. Therefore, I have to believe the interpreter. I am dependent on the interpreter to understand what my mother-in-law said. The moment the judges made themselves the interpreters of the United States Constitution, they took all the power. And then they say, well, you can't understand it. It's too complicated. It's legal talk. You have to be a lawyer. I get asked all the time, Doug, are you a lawyer? And I say, no, that's why I understand the Constitution. They believe you have to have that training in order to understand it because they've made it so complicated with the web of case law, precedent, and all that garbage. In other words, they're interpreting the Constitution, and then you say, well, wait a second, Mr. Lawyer, it says right here, and they say, no. You don't understand the Constitution. You're not a lawyer. Don't worry, we'll interpret it for you. We'll tell you what it means. This was written for the average person to understand. When it was written, the average person did understand it. The average person could read it and fully understand what was being said. Our Constitution now has become legalese, not because it was written in legalese, but because we've got a government, a political class, judges who have complicated our language and said that this thing says that things that it doesn't say. And we're supposed to believe them. Why? Because we don't know the language. We have to trust the interpreter. They became the interpreters of the law and the Constitution. They took all the power. Now we have a judicial oligarchy. The judicial branch went from the weakest of the branches to the strongest of the branches. And it's unconstitutional. They've done this. Here's what it says at the beginning of Article 3. The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as a Congress may time and time ordain and establish. This is a separation of powers. Legislative powers belong to the Congress. Judicial power belongs to the judges. Executive power belongs to the president. The judicial power of the United States is vested. Remember the word vested. Vested means it's irrevocable. They can't give it away. It has been legally transferred to them by the states. And in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. Our district courts and our circuit courts exist because Congress created them. And if Congress created them, what can a creator do? A creator can also destroy what he has created. You remember when you were a kid, right? And Dad says, I brought you into this world. I'll take you out of it, boy. Remember that? Well, some of you. Yeah, well, Congress can say that to the judges, but they don't because they don't have a spine. The Congress can dismantle or rearrange or change the circuit courts and district courts at whim. Now, with the people we have there right now, I'm not so sure I want them to do that, but they can. They can also determine how many people are on the Supreme Court. So while packing the court is not a good idea, unfortunately, it is constitutional. Congress can do it. it's a bad idea. That's the reason why I think we've had like 4 9-0 decisions recently. I think the Supreme Court's trying to send the message to the Congress: don't pack the court. We're not acting ideologically. We are following the law, and they have been. It's been a stunner. 9-0 decisions, and good ones too, blowing my mind. I've done videos on a couple of them. If you go to youtube.com/Douglas V Gibbs, you can check it out. All right, so the judicial power belongs to the courts. The judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their offices during good behavior. It does not say it's a lifetime appointment. It says that if they exhibit bad behavior, they can be removed, impeached. Otherwise, they're left alone. What is good behavior? What is bad behavior? Well, we're told bad behavior is breaking the law. Well, shouldn't bad behavior also be unconstitutional rulings and opinions? If they're ruling unconstitutionally, if they're violating the supreme law of the land, should that not be bad behavior, and should they not be impeached for that? I'm telling you right now, about 70% of the courts are ripe for impeachment. One of the legacies of President Donald J. Trump will be how many judges he appointed. The courts are not exactly as they were. They moved in the right direction, but the work still needs to be going on. It's not done yet. All right, then it says, and they shall at stated times receive for their services a compensation, which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office. In other words, they get raises, they cannot get deductions in pay. Once again, we don't want Congress threatening them, hey, we'll lower your pay if you don't rule in a certain way. So their pay cannot be reduced. Now, Article 1, Section 2 is a list of their authorities. And we're going to stop at a couple of them, but I'm going to read it. Article 3, Section 2, the judicial power shall extend in all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution. In other words, the federal government has to have the authority over the issue for the federal court to take it, in other words. The laws of the United States and treaties made or which shall be made under their authority being the states, because remember, it's the states that are approving the treaties through the Senate.
Doug, I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
Amy is asking, where is the end of the real Constitution? What article/section? Now, she may be, I'm guessing she might be talking about, like
she's talking about the original Constitution that was done in the convention. Article 7. Okay. There are 7 articles. Amendments are part of the Constitution, but they came later. If by using the word real Constitution, if you're referring to the idea, the theory that the Constitution changed in 1871, we've talked about the corporation theory here, and I'm not going to get too much into it, but the original Constitution is still in play. If you go to the congressional website and you look it up, it still says at the end of the preamble, for the United States of America, not of. They are still following the original Constitution, despite what some people may believe. Now, that said, if there are folks that believe that we are under a different Constitution, I'm not going to get into that argument with you, because here's the thing. We are allies, and the solution is still getting back to the original intent of the original Constitution. So rather than disagreeing over whether or not we're under the original Constitution and it's being monkeyed with, or there's a new Constitution under the corporation theory, the fact is the solution is still going back to the original Constitution and its original intent. Yes,
we just have a couple minutes left. Why don't you touch on the question that Chris asked last night, or the thing we're talking about Chris at the event in San Diego? That's a great segue here, because you told a little story about a recipe that I think would be very apropos.
Okay, very good. Well, a gentleman, young man named Chris. Well, I'm not going to go full name, but he knows who he is. Hi, Chris, if you're watching. And he says, Doug, I think I disagree with you. We just need to burn the Constitution, get rid of the legislature, just go back to just local issues, local government, and just get rid of the federal, that way they're not influencing local government. because the people voting for president, all that, it's just not right. And I said, well, originally the people didn't vote for president. He says, what? So originally local issues were supposed to be for local government. Congress has no authority. Federal government has no authority. You're missing here. What you're saying is burn the Constitution. I'm saying, no, we need to burn what we've been doing to the Constitution. We need to go back to the original intent. The original intent is what you're calling for. Now we'll go into the recipe, because my good friend Ron here mentioned it, and it helps people understand. My stepdad, he's been my dad since I was 3. I call him dad, but I'll say stepdad for lack of confusion for some people, has one of the best salsa recipes out there. I use it to this day. I love this recipe. It's a great recipe. And word got out about how good his salsa recipe was. So his sister, she copied it down, and then she gave it out to a few people. And after it worked its way through the family for a couple years, one of his nephews calls him up and says, you know what? Your salsa recipe sucks. So what? Well, what'd you put in it? What'd you do with it? Well, instead of Roma tomatoes, they use the round steak tomatoes. Rather than putting lime juice, they put lemon juice. Instead of garlic, it was garlic powder. And the person in question was from Arkansas, didn't know what cilantro was, looked it up, and if you look up cilantro, it will say Mexican parsley. So he put parsley in it. Of course the salsa sucked. It wasn't the original recipe. It wasn't tasting very good because it wasn't following what was originally put into it. There were assumptions made that shouldn't have been made. The U.S. Constitution has an original recipe. The Constitution's not the problem. The fact is we have left that recipe. We are following a recipe that was never intended and is not in there. We put parsley into our system and it sucks. It's time to get back to the original intent. How about that? You like that, Ron?
I like that. That was perfect. That was perfect. Well, Doug.
Now I know you can see the chat. I can't, but I want to say to everybody out there, first of all, I love all of you. You're all very awesome. Appreciate all of you. If any of you are at tonight's Riley's Farm event there in the Y5iktOh, Oakland area, please come over to my table and say hi.
Absolutely.
First of all. Second of all, I want to, I don't know what chat program you're using, but I know when I'm on For the Republic, I say something and I get a particular item in the chat room. I want to see if it happens here. You're watching, right, Ron? You're watching the chat room? We have all these cockroaches in Washington, D.C., but we breed them locally. That's our problem. Get involved locally. Stop breeding the cockroaches. Now, what happens when I'm on For the Republic is suddenly dancing cockroaches appear in the chat room. I don't know if they're capable of that with this chat room, but if any dancing cockroaches show up, Ron, let me know. But I will say this. A lot of the crowd, when I guest host for the Republic, I've done it like twice now. I tell you, a lot of those people are street fighters, Patriot Streetfighters, man. They get in there and they make all kinds of trouble, and I love you for it. I tell you what, Scott McKay's Patriot Streetfighters are some of the funnest people I'm around because you guys are just downright radical, and I love you for it. And a bunch of them are my classes. I used to say I have at least 1 or 2 in every class. Now I got at least 3 or 4 in every class. And I tell you what, man, the Southern California Patriot Streetfighters, the rest of you around the country, they're putting you to shame, man. The Southern California Patriot Streetfighters, they are off the hook. I want to see all of you, man. I want to see all of you getting off the hook. All right, anyway, I love you all. I love being a part of the Patriot Streetfighter family. I feel like I've been adopted into the family. You guys have welcomed me in, and I love you for it. Thank you so much for having me be a part of the family.
Well, I can echo your sentiment on the Patriot Streetfighters in Southern California. Of course, I'm out here and I see it all the time. But, most of the country has this false illusion that California is just solid blue. But, when you really look at it behind the scenes, California is a deep, deep red. And it just has this big, thick coating of blue paint that's been put over it. And the entire country thinks it's one way when it's really the mindset of the people is definitely more liberty minded. I mean, it's a business. It's a business.
Well, we're under assault all the time.
Right.
We're under the assault all the time. We gotta be good, man. We're behind the Iron Curtain. We gotta be awesome. We gotta be crazy.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Doug, on that note, I think we're going to sign off because you and I have an event to get up to, and I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. And I'm probably going to be doing this for the next couple of weeks, at least while Scott's on tour, just so that we can have some continuity with this class. Again, I'm new at this. This is not my area of strength. I'm more on the back end, but I have I can at least get this done so that you guys can get fed, because this is very, very important. So anyway, thanks for everybody.
Yeah, Ron likes being behind the scenes. We're not going to let him be behind the scenes, folks. So when you come see me at my table there at Riley's Farm, say hi to Ron too. He's going to be right next to me.
Yeah, believe it or not, I'm a little more bashful on camera. So, but anyway, thank you guys. Everybody have a great evening, and we'll see you.
We did not engage in conflict that was out of line with our mission.
Is it disloyalty? Is it sedition? Is it treason to oppose the hands of tyranny? Never!
I will never send troops anywhere on a mission of that kind without telling them that if somebody shoots at them, they can darn well shoot back.
I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty! Oh, give me death!
A dark cloud is finally lifting across the world as U.S. military intelligence and their global partners are destroying the deep state criminal power structure that has ruled over our planet for hundreds of years.
We are free with the God-given right, and we shall not yield that right to any power on earth.
Hi, I'm Scott McKay. The world is at, and I am your host on The Tipping Point on Revolution Radio, where every Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, we bring you the latest in this ensuing takedown of this global criminal empire.
That's an image of strength.
You'll get the raw, hard truth here on The Tipping Point, so come join us Mondays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern in Studio B at revolution.radio. Folks, thanks for listening to this broadcast. If you'd like to follow us, you can catch us at scottmckay.us. That's scottmckay.us, MC capital K-A-Y. If you ever lose us on the YouTube channel, simply go to scottmckay.us and click on the YouTube icon, because that will be the current broadcast YouTube channel. We are also on Rumble, Brighteon, and BitChute.